Hi, I'm Jill at Materiella.com, and maybe you figured out that Materiella headquarters is my living room, and I'm lucky enough that my husband doesn't mind if I hang up a gray sheet to be my design wall here for my own personal use, and then for something like this, where I want to talk about both PBS, which is Paintbrush Studio Fabrics Flower Market line, and the Birch organic poplins that I've just been cutting up here. You see in behind me. I was looking for the 70s vintage sheet feel, but as I mentioned in a blog post, maybe you saw it, maybe not, I've been thinking about being a more conscientious consumer. And as a quilter, what does that mean for me, right? Well, for me it means maybe recycling a few more men's shirts, some Oxfords I got from my dad, or ties I got from my father and my husband. As I've been thinking about the whole vintage sheet look, sometimes vintage sheets are pretty worn out, this line of fabrics came out. I saw it, and I really love like this gold with the flowers there and the little touches of mustard in it. It's a nice buttery yellow, and then there's deeper, richer gold here, and the gold with the flowers is gorgeous, just fun stuff. And all of those are the Paintbrush Studio Fabrics Flower Market line, designed by A Beautiful Mess, and they printed the designs on an organic cotton base. So here's a fat quarter that I haven't cut up into squares yet, but it's one of the beautiful stripes that I'll probably cut this way and use as my sashing or binding at some point. And as you can see, here's the white cotton background fabric, and that is the organic part, and then they printed on top of it. It looks to me like it was a digital printing process. Here's the selvage, so we don't have those colored dot guidelines, it's just black, but the printing that they did on it is really marvelous. I'm very impressed with it. Sometimes with the newer digital prints, and I'm guessing these are digital, but I'm not certain of that. But sometimes with the new digital prints, what happens is as you're cutting, if there's a nick in your rotary cutter blade or something happens, maybe your board's a little rough and you skip a thread, and then you pull that fabric away that you were just cutting, you get a pulled thread. And it shows up as a white line perpendicular to where you were cutting. In most quilting fabrics, you could actually kind of push and pull those threads and the weave back together and ease it back in, and it wouldn't be a problem. But now with some of the digital prints, if you pull a thread and it gets in there very far, like past your seam allowance, you see a white streak running in especially in a dark fabric. So you have to be really careful, make sure your blade's in good shape and your board, and be gentle when you're pulling pieces apart so that you know you're not pulling some threads. So I'm not having that with this. I'm not having that issue as I cut these, even though I feel like it may be a digital print. So let's get back to the colors then too. So I'm happy with the fabric content. It's cotton, it's solid. That's your cross grain, here's your grain. And then the bias is pretty normal, average stretch for a quilting cotton. And it is a substantial weight. It is a good typical quilting cotton weight. And then if I bring this up really close to the camera, you can kind of see it's a little bit of a textury kind of effect, that printing on the fabric, and I like that. It really gives it, some of these florals, the look of being almost like a bark cloth. But if I grab one of these, here, this gold one, this gold floral is just yummy. You see that gold, then with the mustards, you see it's partially due to the cotton backing, you know, the organic fabric, and it's partially due to those dyes and those colors. It's really a great color and textured look. So those are the Flower Market fabrics. Some of these are their backgrounds. There's a green tinted one, a beige tinted one, and a pinker one. Is that shown up? There it is. Now, if you were going to do their free pattern that they have on their website, I actually would maybe recommend picking one of the polka dots, or look at them and see. and use that as your background. They have one of their palette solids listed as the background, which would give you a certain effect, but I think that these are cuddly and cozy enough and really gives it that grandma made me a quilt in the 70s kind of feel if you use one of their polka dots. It's your background fabric for all those white expanses. So which one is that? That's more the beige, yellowy beige tone, and you're seeing it showing up in, I've got some bright lights on. That's the pinker one from a distance, and then as you can tell, this one's going to be that green. So those, I'm very happy with them. I started working on my scrappy binding with some of the leftovers from my fat quarters, and as long as you're cutting on grain and cross grain, there's not excessive fraying, good quality weave. And they pressed out, pressing out those fat quarters took me a little bit of doing because it is a substantial fabric. So you can see all the folds here on the back of this. I ironed it once, well, pressed, and then I sprayed it down good with the really fine mist. Have you seen these hair salon kind of sprayers? It's a real fine mist. So I gave it a nice coating of that on my 18-inch wide iron, which will hold a fat quarter easily, and then pressed it out a second time to get them nice and flat so I could do my cuts. And I'm happy. We have high humidity right now, and I'm not really seeing the folds coming back badly on any of the pieces, which can happen to me. I need to up my ironing game somehow. The Birch Poplins are these solids. So this moss green, the brick up there, this orange, and 2, 3, and then this lighter green came out of my mom's stash that I don't know how long ago she got it, but since it matches this whole 70s flower market thing, I'm guessing she got it in the 70s. Those poplins are a little bit lighter weight feeling fabric, but they handle really well. They're almost as fine of a thread as a batik, or that weight, without being quite as dense. I'll grab one here. So here's the orange. Great fabric. Cross grain, nice and tight, and the bias pretty typical. These are handling really well. They pressed out great. They're not wobbly when I'm cutting them. They're not wobbly sewing them. I bought a few other colors, but these were the ones that I felt went with these fabrics the best for what I'm trying to get. I know that especially my husband's grandmother would have put these colors in with this stuff in the 70s. My mom too, probably. So that is the Birch Fabrics solid poplin, moss, brick, and orange. I'm going to do some further cutting on this to make my quilt, but I wanted to get it up on the wall and really see if I was happy with those solids. And I got all of the fat quarters for the flower market bundle. Some of them I decided I didn't want to mix in the blocks that I'm going to be cutting. I kept the ginghams, and I kept that, you see that pink plaid way up there in the corner? That's one of theirs. There's also a couple other plaids and a couple other stripes. Same cotton substrate, basic fabric. The ginghams are printed on the back, on the cotton straight. They are straight. So this one, you can see, I didn't really have any issues getting those lines lined up. So for those of you who really want your ginghams lined up and avoid them because maybe they don't always work that well for you, these are good and stable. They're printed straight on the grain. And you can see, like, I've got a little fraying here, and that's just me from handling that raw edge, I think, because this other fresh cut line is not fraying, and it's perfectly in line, and I think these are going to sew up just spot on as I get a quilt made. I hope so. And it'll probably be a while before I finish that. I've got about 5 other UFOs going right now, but I wanted to talk about these a little bit because I think it's important for us as quilters to maybe give these organic fabrics their day on the sewing table. So thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful. Please go to materiella.com, and then I'll have links to the various pages where you can either take a look at the manufacturer's pictures of these. And Fabric Worm is Birch Fabrics that makes the solid poplin, so you can get those from them. Or some of your local quilt stores may be carrying them. I know my local quilt store is carrying the Birch lines of Charlie Harper, so you might be able to get them there. And I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me comments or questions if you have any. Thanks.